Today we will talk about Flex Your Uncomfortable Muscle podcast. This podcast is officially made by Krish Fantastic TV. All rights reserved by Krish Fantastic TV. This is going to be a long podcast. So now we will start our podcast. Our podcast will be said by Samir. I would like Samir to start, please.
Self-discipline is uncomfortable by nature. You would never willingly subject yourself to the struggle of being disciplined unless you had a strong purpose for doing so. We never hear about people needing discipline to eat ice cream or play video games, for instance. There's no amount of knowledge, habit formation, thinking, or visualization that will make self-discipline comfortable. It's simply a fact that being disciplined is going to feel like a chore. However, the key quantity we need more of isn't necessarily self-discipline itself, it's the amount of discomfort we can handle and tolerate. That endurance is what's meant by flexing your uncomfortable muscle, using mental toughness to power past instincts to choose what's easy, comfortable, and immediately gratifying. This process seeks to turn a stabbing pain into a dull annoyance you can barely feel, or a hunger pang that you actually crave. Because it means you are sticking to your diet. Being disciplined comes down to choosing temporary discomfort that helps you in the long term. Just as lifting weights causes temporary struggle that allows muscles to grow back stronger, choosing disciplined actions and decision-making also makes your uncomfortable muscle stronger. Making a regular habit of embracing uncomfortable situations can have a positive impact on all aspects of your life. Shifting your view of discomfort and choosing to embrace it equips you with the mental strength to thrive regardless of whatever difficulties, temptations, and failures you experience. Discipline doesn't care if you are exhausted, irritated, or even dejected, it's when you need it the most. Exercising discipline quite literally trains your brain to default to a mode of perseverance. Urge surfing. Developing discipline is tough. But there are some accepted methodologies for making it easier by understanding how to reduce the strength of urges and temptations. One such method has to do with managing urges. Urges are defined as impulses to engage in a habitual behavior or past addiction, and they are frequently manifested in physical sensations in the body, not just in thoughts. The late psychologist Alan Marlett, a pioneer in the field of addiction treatment, developed a methodology for dealing with urges. Marlett's technique is appropriately called urge surfing, where urges are compared to ocean waves that you surf over as they rise in intensity, peak, and then eventually crash. Urge surfing can be thought of as an exercise for training your self-discipline and mental toughness. It's meant to teach you how to embrace discomfort and resist temptations. The next section will give a more detailed explanation of urge surfing, but here is a basic set of instructions so you can understand what urge surfing is before moving on. Pause whatever you are doing for a moment and think about an urge that you recently felt. Whatever the urge was, think about it and pay attention to the physical and emotional sensations experienced with it. Indulge in it. Notice how these sensations evolve over time. As you're doing this, softly focus on your breath to help you ride out the urges, imagining that they are waves and you are surfing across them. Our natural tendency is to identify with our urges. And urge surfing helps us to separate our identity from whatever past habits and tendencies we want to correct. Instead of thinking, I want a cigarette, you might think, I have an urge to have a cigarette. It's not a part of you that you must fight, but rather a sensation that you experience, observe, and then let pass or settle. Fighting urges is rarely effective, but curiously observing urges without identifying with them gives you much greater odds of overcoming them. A typical urge will peak between 20 and 30 minutes after it arrives if you battle it. Battling urges, or trying to get rid of them, is counterproductive as it usually makes them stronger and longer lasting. Furthermore, battling an urge makes it that much more deeply ingrained while simultaneously weakening your confidence in your ability to change it in the future. But when you choose an open attitude about your urges and watch them without fighting them, they subside much more quickly and effortlessly. The power of urges comes from your willingness to indulge them, not from the addictions and temptations themselves. This point is illustrated well by patients at rehab facilities, who find that being entirely cut off from any access to addictive substances results in remarkably few cravings and urges compared to what they would experience outside. These facilities remove their patients' internal struggles, without which there's nothing to feed the urges. Thus, they simply pass by. You may not be able to check yourself into a rehab facility in order to remove the internal struggle from your quest to be disciplined, but that is all the more reason to practice urge surfing. This technique puts you in a position of power over your urges, not won through a power struggle, but instead acquired by conscious attention, yet coupled with sensible detachment from that which is trying to overpower you. Another useful metaphor for this internal struggle is to think of the urges as a waterfall, where battling the urges is equivalent to trying to block the waterfall. Of course, it's inevitable that the waterfall will break through, perhaps even more forcefully than its original form because of the pressure built up by trying to block it. Mindfulness is the escape from this impossible scenario, because rather than trying to block the waterfall, or urge, you step away from it and just observe it. This strategy is crucial to identify, as implementing it is one of the most effective ways to improve self-efficacy.
Continue your podcast, Samir.
The principle underlying urge surfing is related to the wisdom offered by the Tao Te Ching, a written work mainly attributed to the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. One of the passages in the ancient text goes, "Therefore the master acts without doing anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go." Such art of calm acceptance no matter the circumstances around you or the urges that gnaw at you is key to mastering the practice of urge surfing. If you can successfully change your attitude about urges and temptations to one of curiosity instead of fear, resistance or resignation, you'll also be able to change your behavior. Scientifically study your own habits. Are you able to observe your urges as sensations you can experience but not give in to? Or do you strive to combat those urges with all your might, as if attempting to block a strong rush of water using your bare hands? As long as you attempt to fight your urges, you're setting yourself up for failure. In learning to accept and observe them, you make it possible to watch them quickly fade away. Are you unintentionally feeding your urges? After realizing that fighting urges is a losing battle, you might logically think that you should try to intervene earlier on in the process. This can be done by distracting yourself or trying to think your way out of an urge. Similar to fighting urges, however, distractions and rationalizations have the opposite result of what you desire. These techniques actually feed urges and make them stronger, while also building an illusion in your mind that urges won't go away until you succumb to them. When fighting urges and distracting yourself from them both inevitably fail, it's understandable that you might feel defeated. Many people reach this stage and surrender to the idea that they aren't capable of changing bad habits. Distracting yourself from urges may not logically seem like something that harms discipline. Many people think of distractions as a sort of self-created rehab center, where you reduce urges by reducing your opportunities to indulge them. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way in real life. In fact, numerous studies in the last several decades have shown that suppressing thoughts, feelings, and sensations ultimately makes them stronger. Clark, Ball and Pape 1991. Golding, Wegner 1995. Wegner, Schneider, Carter and White 1987. Wegner, Schneider, Knutson and McMahon 1991. Chioffi and Holloway 1993. This phenomenon is easily illustrated through a psychological game that you've probably experienced before. The game is simply to try to not think of something in particular after somebody mentions it. Somebody might say, for example, "Whatever you do, do not think about a hippopotamus." Of course, each subsequent mention of hippopotamuses will make not thinking about them all the more impossible. The harder you try to avoid that thought, the more it consumes you. And so it is with attempting to avoid urges. That's not to say that distractions and battling with urges never works. Sometimes it does. But even in those cases, the battle leaves you feeling irritable and annoyed rather than relaxed and calm. You aren't going to be able to trick your own mind and feel positive about it in the process, as much as you may try. For the purposes of this book, we are only interested in effective and sustainable solutions. In the case of overcoming urges, that solution is surfing the urge. In learning to be disciplined, you become comfortable with the discomfort of seeing an urge and not indulging it. It's far more comfortable to judge our urges and to view them as the enemy, but this mindset will always acknowledge the urges we want to eliminate. The next time you feel an urge and you are ready to implement the urge surfing technique, follow these steps. Take a few moments to notice where in your body you are experiencing the urges. Just as hearing music might give you an urge to tap your feet or bob your head, most urges can actually be felt in the body if we have awareness. 2. Once you connect the urge to the place in your body where it's felt most strongly, focus your attention on that area. Observe the sensations you experience there. 3. Spend 1 to 2 minutes noticing your breath. 4. Imagine that the sensations you feel as a result of your urge are a wave. Watch that wave rising and falling as your urge peaks and subsides. 5. As the urge inevitably passes, take note of its transient nature. The next time an urge arises, you'll be that much more confident in your ability to ride it out to its conclusion. What's important to take away from this experience is that everything you think and feel is temporary, including desires. When you forget that fact, cravings and urges can feel overwhelming. But if you are patient and confident in your ability to ride out a temporary urge until it passes, you will find that doing so is far more effective than trying to distract yourself or battle the urges head-on. When you get the first pangs of hunger in your stomach, you might think the discomfort won't go away until you have something to eat. Hunger is also one of the urges that most commonly causes irritability, as being productive when you're hungry is extremely difficult. But as anybody who has experimented with fasting knows, hunger is as temporary as any other urge. You might notice that you feel hungry when you are bored or when you've been sitting for a while at work. You might feel the pangs in your stomach, but if you pay attention closely, you don't feel that your stomach is empty or that you are in dire need of calories to energize yourself. A few minutes of just accepting the hunger and not taking it as a strict sign that you need to eat can actually make that hunger quickly fade. Hunger pangs go away and don't mean you're going to starve or faint. Start taking an interest in your urges and studying or experimenting with them. You'll learn that you are not the urges you feel until you fight them or succumb to them. As long as you simply observe them coming and going, they lose much of their power to negatively influence your behavior. Practice discomfort. You may recall from the first chapter that willpower is like a muscle that fatigues the more you use it within a given time.
Samir, now continue your podcast.
This is actually good news, because willpower fatiguing like a muscle means that it can be strengthened like one. 2. The exercise that most effectively increases your baseline level of willpower is leaving your comfort zone. That involves pushing yourself to regularly do things that you aren't completely secure with doing so that you become familiar with the feeling of discomfort itself. Leaving your comfort zone is important, because it teaches you that the things you fear aren't as bad as they might seem. Each time you learn that lesson in some small way, your tolerance for discomfort and your willpower both increase. You don't need to be uncomfortable in your daily life, but being familiar with the feeling sure helps you in the face of actual adversity. You can even create anxiety and uncertainty yourself so that they are controlled and manageable to show yourself that you are capable of handling these feelings. Zhang gave a popular TED Talk about his personal journey outside of his comfort zone, in which he confronted his fear of rejection and the social anxiety that came with it. Zhang wanted to become more confident, so he set out to desensitize himself to rejection by seeking rejection out in some small and controlled way 100 days in a row. Some of Zhang's rejections included borrowing $100 from a stranger, requesting a burger refill, and asking to play soccer in somebody's backyard. When the 100 days were up, Zhang was a new person with more confidence and a greater appreciation for how kind people are to one another. Zhang's story of overcoming a fear of rejection is applicable to everybody. Your personal fears and discomforts are also your opportunities to challenge yourself. If you like to be in control, spend the day deferring to other people. If you're more comfortable being passive, spend the day asserting yourself and making more decisions. Whatever you are comfortable doing, do the opposite. Injecting manageable discomfort and uncertainty into your life isn't difficult to do. You might order a dish on the restaurant menu that has ingredients you haven't heard of before. Or instead of taking a relaxing, hot shower, you could turn the water to cold and force yourself to stand in it until you gain control of your breath and calm your mind. Ask people for discounts that you don't think you'll get. Sit down in a restaurant and then leave after receiving the menu. That walk to the door will feel incredibly long. Even just doing something spontaneous or out of character can get you out of your comfort zone enough to see that your uncomfortable zone isn't that bad. If you are clumsy and awkward and you don't like dancing, go to a dance class. The worst thing that can happen is a few other people at a beginner's class might learn that you are bad at dancing, and they certainly won't care. Your willingness to even try will probably endear you to others, quite the opposite of the embarrassment and isolation that you might fear. Discipline is inherently uncomfortable, so strengthening your relationship with discomfort is one of the best ways to improve self-discipline. Everybody has different fears, insecurities, and discomforts. But a lot of people go through their life avoiding those things, and thus limiting their own potential. If you want to maximize all the positive aspects of your life, you can stand with facing your fears and choosing to be uncomfortable. As this practice builds your willpower, you can begin to change some of your less beneficial habits and addictions. When you feel pulled into a battle with your urges, you'll have the mental strength to resist that temptation and to instead ride the urges out like a wave. And if fear motivates you to avoid your urges altogether by distracting yourself from them, well, fear is sometimes an opportunity for positive change. Discomfort and struggle are what make you who you are. You're reading this book because you want to be more disciplined, so if you're going to follow through on that, then it's time for you to get comfortable with discomfort. Taking away self-discipline often feels like a chore and is essentially an act of discomfort, which is what makes it so hard to practice consistently. To be a self-disciplined individual, therefore, has a lot to do with how much discomfort you can tolerate. When you constantly flex your uncomfortable muscle, you eventually get to a point where self-discipline ceases to be a sharp pain and instead becomes a familiar nudge. One of the most effective ways to practice discomfort is urge surfing, which has been shown to be more useful than trying to actively fight urges. Battling your urges is usually counterproductive, as that process tends to strengthen them and prolong the time you spend trying to get rid of them. Instead, urge surfing enables you to ride the wave of the urge without judgment, thus allowing the desire to pass. Avoid turning to distractions and rationalizations to deal with temptations, as those tactics work to feed those urges and simply intensify your need to come back to your cravings after trying so hard to get away from them. Resist identifying with your urges. You are separate from them, and you can decide to let them pass by as if they're ocean waves you surf over as they come to you, rise in intensity, peak, and eventually crash. To practice the urge surfing technique, notice where your urges manifest in your body, and focus your attention on that place. Simply observe the sensations there and spend a minute or two noticing your breath. Imagine those sensations as a wave and watch it peak and subside. As your urges pass away, notice how transient they are and recall that the next time you feel another come your way. Engage in activities that will ease you into getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Practice rejection therapy, or simply put yourself in uncomfortable situations that will show you that you can control and manage the anxiety and other negative feelings you experience.
Wow, Samir, that was an amazing explanation for the podcast. Okay, bye Samir. I will see you soon.
Okay, bye Wilfred.
Thank you very much guys for watching this video. Bye guys.